And now part 4 of our 4-part special with Palestinian American, human rights major, and former Miss Arab USA, Suzanne Aslam. This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I'm your host, Ramses Ja. Now let's shift and discuss the second part of my initial inquiry, which was, what does a political solution look like? You mentioned, just briefly, you mentioned ending an occupation. Yeah. So go from there, please.
So this is just my opinion, and I think I share this opinion with a lot of Palestinians. Okay. But this isn't a consensus that, you're not just speaking on behalf of...
You know more than most humans on earth. So this is where we are. So please share freely.
Israel was built on the backs of Palestinians and their land through murder, torture, rape, ethnic cleansing, genocide. Name all the bad things. Name every international law that we have created to make sure that this doesn't happen. They have spit in the face of all of those laws. I don't think that we move forward unless Israel falls. I don't think that we move forward unless it becomes Palestine again. The way it was, where Palestinians lived together with Muslims and Jews and Christians, and it was all Palestine. You cannot force a group of people to acquiesce to this kind of violence and then try to be so unbelievably amenable to the oppressors. It needs to be the other way around. It is our time. I have thoughts of visions and fantasies of going back home and rebuilding, and all of us working together and rebuilding and kind of creating this new order in Palestine. And it feels so possible when you remove Israeli politicians from this. And I'm not saying Palestinian politicians are amazing. In fact, this is a people's revolution.
So those aren't the best long-term solutions. They're better solutions for a short-term. Yeah. Yeah.
The Palestinian politicians often are in the pockets of Israelis, or they just, they kind of made it easy for them. The Israelis found politicians who can just who are easy to manipulate. And those are who are in power. And most Palestinians are not necessarily on the side of the top authority in Palestine.
So are these Hamas supported people? Like Israel supporting Hamas people? Because I'm not intimately familiar with the government. So
so I'm talking about the Palestinian Authority. So the prime minister and president inside of the West Bank. Okay. They're not Hamas.
Okay. Yeah, that part I know.
They're a group called Fatah.
Okay.
But they're just more of a liberal. When I say liberal, I mean secular organization, where Hamas is rooted in Islam.
Gotcha.
So I'm talking about a people's movement, a people's revolution, grassroots, which I know something that you love. But that's how it needs to happen. And it can happen with Israeli citizens. Sure. There's so many Israeli citizens who are against the occupation. It's beautiful. But I don't see a path forward, where Israel has, the state of Israel, the government of Israel has any say in what we do. I just don't.
So are you saying that Israel ceases to exist?
Yeah. And I know that sounds really extreme, but what they're doing is really extreme. They're committing genocide. As of right now, there's 37,000 people who have been murdered in 170 days. They've created 17,000 orphans. That is extreme, and extreme behavior should not be rewarded with, hey, let's find a nice little solution for the problem that you've created. No, you need to go. You need to go. And that's why I prefaced with, I don't know who all agrees with this. I know there's a large contingency of us who agree with this. I don't see a world in, civilizations fall. They do. The Roman Empire is no longer here. they are one that they are not for peace is the problem. So we can't work with an organization that doesn't believe in peace. They don't want peace with Palestinians. Therefore, they cannot exist if you're saying, how do we have a peaceful solution in this utopia that we dream of where we are free? They cannot be.
So I'm not pushing back here.
Okay.
I'm inquiring on behalf of listeners and people who might have questions, as they're listening to this conversation. Let's say that version of reality is a very heavy lift. It's not as attainable as some other realities that could potentially come into manifestation. And let's say that the West Bank is a casualty of this alternative solution, right? So the West Bank now is ceded to the state of Israel. I know your family's there, so this is hypothetical. Okay. And then there's a new equally sized plot of land that is near where Gaza is. And then there's restitution, there's, funds and everything like that.
So you're saying we split that land in half? It's half, like literally in half?
No. What I'm saying is, this is just me hypothetically. Yeah, I know. Just you're humoring me. So, okay, the West Bank, everyone who is Palestinian, who lives in the West Bank, that wants to be under Palestinian rule needs to move to this new land that we're adding to the Gaza Strip. Okay. We're going to add more land to the Gaza Strip to resettle the folks from West Bank. We're going to give money. We're going to, whatever, passage, blah, blah, blah. We're going to make this work. We're going to give you money to rebuild this strip of land now that's bigger. And we're going to give you access to your ports. We're going to, make sure you invest in your own infrastructure, this, that, and the third, so we don't have to control anything. It will be a separate entity entirely. And then Israel will be over here, y'all will be over there, and we don't have to fight over borders. We don't have to do that sort of stuff, right? So let's say someone puts something like that together that feels a little bit more feasible. I don't know if it is or isn't. I'm just saying, let's say hypothetically it does feel feasible. Do you feel like, or if you feel like people would push back against that, on what grounds do you feel that there would be pushback against that? Because as I mentioned, for a person like me, go ahead.
No.
For a person like me, when I look at the incremental progress that Black people have achieved in this country, going hundreds of years. So this is several lifetimes, incremental progress, from being 3/5 of a human being to, what I'm saying? Like on and on and on, all the way up, right?
Yeah.
To then being the president of the United States, we still have a ways to go.
Yeah, right? But it was a pretty cool one.
Right. It was a bright moment.
It was a beautiful moment.
But that progress took several lifetimes. And it took several times for people, several instances of people coming to the table and incremental change, incremental progress, incremental growth. We have to put out the fire before we deal with the flood, like that sort of thing, right? So let's say someone comes to the table and they have a realistic, feasible, whatever, plan to make something like that happen. Where does the pushback come from Palestinian people, if there is any? Go.
Can I give you the pushback from the other side?
Sure.
Okay. This is from, so you know how you've heard, I don't know if you've heard, but when we say Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, and then there are American politicians who say, hey, you can't say that. That's calling for genocide. And we're like, how exactly does that call for genocide? By saying we want freedom? The Likud party, who Netanyahu is a part of, they're like Republican party.
Gotcha.
In 1979, in their Likud party charter, they wrote, and I quote, they are the origins of this: "The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable. Between the sea and the Jordan, there will only be Israeli sovereignty." they want all that land. So in this hypothetical scenario where we cut Palestine in half, they're not going to do that. We barely have any of it left, and they're murdering people over it, over that little bit that we have left. So this is why I'm saying Israel is not a peace partner. They are not people to contend with and to negotiate with and to come to the table and say, hey, what do you think? Okay, we'll give you this, you give us that. Great. They don't want that, and they have done nothing but prove to us that they do not want that. So, in my opinion, they no longer should have a say. And the fact that American
solution,
right, and the fact that American politicians will sit there and consult with Israelis, but not consult with Palestinians about what's going on, is incredibly telling about where the United States and Israel actually stand. So they can talk two-state solution all they want, but the proof on the ground shows that that's not what their policy is and what they really stand for.
Okay. That is bleak.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
no, it's okay. It's okay.
It's where we're.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's where we're at. It's why we're here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in the here and now, we have our walking papers, or our standing orders. You know, we need to let our voices be heard if we're in support of the Palestinian people. I'm sure that there's, would you call it?
BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions.
And, you know, there have been, we talked about this on Civic Cypher, there have been examples of that on college campuses.
Yes.
Here in the U.S. with people actually doing that, right? And these small victories for the Palestinian side of things seem to be very upsetting for the Israeli side of things, which is like, you know, as you mentioned, I think this was part of our first conversation. You mentioned, you know, a war should be approximately equal in terms of its scope, right? But, you know, where it's like whenever we see Palestinian action, we see Israeli overreaction, and the BDS initiative is certainly one such component. At least that's been my opinion. And again,
it's 100%
I'm not
accurate.
I want to make sure for the benefit of our listeners, I am not Jewish. I am not Palestinian. And if I had to have a bias based on all things being equal, my bias would be in favor of Jewish people, right? But right is right and wrong is wrong. And I have a fundamental responsibility to say when something is
careful, because you're conflating.
No, I'm going to fix it.
Okay.
And what we're talking about is not even Jewish people.
Right. There we go.
We're talking about Israel, right? And so the problem, as we've discussed, is that a lot of times when you come out in support of, you know, hey, this is not right, what's happening to Palestinian people, you run the risk of being called anti-Semitic, which means you don't love Jewish people or you don't like Jewish people. And I spent my whole life loving Jewish people, and they've spent their whole lives loving me. And so that part is something that I believe needs to be foundational in any conversation that at least I'm having. But let's do this.
Can I just say one thing?
Please.
Do you know what I read yesterday by a journalist in Gaza who was talking about something that Israel did? And she said, this isn't Judaism. Look what they're doing. This is not Judaism.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
She's still, as a Palestinian Muslim girl, caught up in the genocide. She has had to flee 5 different times in 6 months. She still said she was still defending a faith that so many people have conflated with the genocide.
Israel.
Yes.
With Israel.
And she, as a victim of this genocide, is saying, hey, look what Israel's doing, and look at them pretending to be on the side of Jews when they're really not.
Yeah.
You know, this is what's so beautiful about the Palestinians. When you talk to people who are Palestinian or are our allies, we're like freedom, equality, love. In fact, I'll send you a song when we're done that is so beautiful that they put out on the occupation. And it's called God is Love. And this is what you're hearing from the Palestinian side. From the Israeli side, you were hearing vile talk that I cannot say on air.
Oh, I've seen video of blackface. They're like,
it's horrific.
Anti-black stuff too. I'm like, what?
It's very weird. Yeah. It gets really dark really fast. Just looking at those two, it's so easy to see what the truth is. It's so easy when people are rooted in love, they're rooted in truth.
and everything else is, I think vile is a great word for it. And, again, the issue that it really rattled me is that, as I mentioned, I grew up with Jewish people. I've never seen Jewish people get in a fight. I've seen them argue, sure. You know what I mean? But not fight each other. Yeah. This is a peaceful people, a kind people, if I'm painting with broad strokes. These are people that take care of their family. They take care of extended family because they've taken care of me. I've eaten at plenty of Jewish table.
Same.
You know, and I grew up broke. You know what I'm saying? So they knew what they was dealing with, you know? And just a peaceful, happy people that, like, you know, they're not looking for war. They're just like, look, man, I'm doing my thing. I'm happy. You know, like this is the Judaism that I'm familiar with, right? I live in a Jewish neighborhood, right? So there are Hasidic Jews that live where my house is, right? And they walk on Saturday, walk around, and they're with their families. And it's such a beautiful thing to see. And I show them respect, and they acknowledge me, and they say hi, you know, and they get it. Like we're there to share love. So this is the energy I've gotten from Jewish people all the time. And then when I see what's going on with Israel, I'm like, that does not look like what I remember. You know what I'm saying? And that does not feel like it's in the spirit of the faith of the people. And nor is it consistent with the culture of the people that I have come to appreciate and love so much. And so, I'm glad that you shared that. I think that is, it's important that if nothing else is chronicled accurately, that part should be, because nobody should be persecuted, especially, two groups. I want to say this, 2 groups of people that I found peace and love and honor in their faiths. Jewish people, and believe it or not, Muslim people. These eyes have seen it. I've witnessed it. And I grew up, you know, post 9/11, and everybody's trying to say, oh, Islam is a violent.
It was
nah, fam. It's not like that. I've been over there on the ground. The whole thing is peace. All the terrorism stuff. That's like if you lived in the US and the Ku Klux Klan took over, and then they were the global. They
represented us.
They represented Christians. Yeah. You know, so, outside of that, the real Muslim people, true Islam is a faith of peace to the same degree that Christianity is, to the same degree that Judaism is.
I read something yesterday that said Zionism, the victims of Zionism are Muslims and Christians. The victims of ISIS are Muslims and Christians.
There you go. Right?
These are just terrorist groups. These are extreme groups, wings. Right? That do not represent
the core principles and tenets, right? And so again, while I have, again, a broader breadth of experience with Jewish people in terms of taking in the culture and really becoming familiar with it, I've actually been to the countries, plural, where Muslim people are, and they worship, and it's in the language, it's in the greetings, it's in the way that they do business, it's in the way that they interact with each other, and the way that they resolve conflicts, and it's very honorable. Super honorable. And the last thing I'm going to do to you is lie to you about that. You know what I'm saying? That's the last thing I'm going to do. So, you know, for me, it's important to say that. And this has stopped being a religious issue a long time ago.
It never was. Right. And that's part of the propaganda, is to make you think that it was.
It has to do with faith. And it stopped being that for me a long time ago. Like initially, again, when I first spoke with Ami Horowitz, when he first came on the show after October 11th, you know, he gave me the whole thing. Well, he gave me his half of the whole thing. And I knew that at some point I was going to have a conversation with someone who could give me some insight into the other side. And thank God for Q-Ward and that flight that you two met on. And, you know, you are the universe being manifest for the purposes of us being able to share light and truth, in some dark places. So I know you are a Christian woman. Yes. And so, you know, if that's your faith listening to us, then this is the manifestation of God's will in my estimation, because I didn't know you and I knew I needed to have this conversation, and I may need to have more in the future. I hope that they will be brighter conversations and on happier terms. But, you know, I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing these heavy moments and this pain. Again, not because we're not trying to be gross, but I do recognize and respect that it requires a bit of that. You will not be forgotten. If I have my faculties and they give me a microphone and an audience, you will not be forgotten. Not here.
Thank you, Ramses.
Right. And again, I know you came with notes, so I want to give you the last words before we conclude, for this installment. So.
My notes are all very granular. So the, 1917 and 1948. So I won't do that. I think we can start to, like you said, you heard Ami and then you started to do your own research. So what I will say is, when you look at the side in every movie, we stand on the side of the oppressed. Even in the big movies, Star Wars and the Hunger Games, we're always on the side of the oppressed. And it's important for us to look and see why these people are being oppressed and who's benefiting from this oppression. And I would say that it's always important to stand on the side of peace. And we as Palestinians are on the side of peace, but there is no peace without freedom. And that's what we want.
Listen, man, as a protester, as an activist, I know the chant all too well. No justice,
no peace.
Listen, so whatever is going on over there, my hope. I hope that Palestine it ends up getting what it deserves, and that the only thing I know about the Israeli government is the things that I've learned in the past few months.
They're not good.
And I have not encountered anything. And believe me, I've looked. I have not encountered anything that makes me feel like they are helping, certainly not the Palestinian people, but it doesn't feel like they're helping Jewish people globally. Because as sentiment shifts away from supporting Israel, so too it seems that sentiments shift away from Jewish people, and that's a very dangerous world for my Jewish brothers and sisters to live in. And so I worry about that too. So again, thank you for coming on. Once again, our guest who has spent plenty of time with me, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you.
And if I call, I hope that you'll come back again. She goes by the name of Suzanne Aslam. She's a human rights major, former Miss Arab USA, an actress, as well as an activist turned writer. She is a Palestinian American woman who spent time working with a peacekeeping team. And not only does she have family on the ground there and has been over there a ton of times, but she has a deep personal understanding of the occupation. Please follow her social media. You can find her at The Activist. And, if you have any thoughts you'd like to share on these or any of these episodes, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on all social media at Ramses Jah. Or of course, you can use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. And until we talk again, peace. This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Jah, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice, from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.